In the last few years, America has learned in graphic detail about how the notion of too big to jail has resulted in an executive branch that refuses to prosecute a single banker connected to the financial meltdown. Well, this week, with the release of a secret Justice Department white paper about the president's so-called kill list, we're learning about another radical notion being pioneered by the Obama administration. Let's call it too big to curtail. That's the most accurate label to describe the machinery of the government's drone war. As the new white paper asserts, that war, which studies show is creating more terrorists than it's neutralizing, that war cannot be curtailed by laws or even the Constitution. Therefore, the argument goes, the president no longer merely claims the power to detain and torture people without due process, nor does he merely claim the power to execute American citizens without indictment or trial. Those extra constitutional powers, which only a few years ago were seen as utterly illegal, those are quaint compared to the new assertion that the president can now do all of this without any concrete intelligence, suggesting a citizen is even linked to terrorist activity. This is the scariest takeaway from that white paper, which was released as a bipartisan group of senators demands answers about the drone war. As NBC News first reported, the paper uses the Orwellian phrase broader concept of imminence to argue that the law, quote, does not require the United States to have clear evidence when targeting a U.S. citizen for assassination. To really appreciate how extreme that whole concept is, understand that it's already blatantly illegal for a president to execute an American citizen without so much as an indictment. After all, if the constitutional notion of due process means anything, at minimum, it means at least being formally charged with a crime. But in the new white paper, the Obama administration isn't just laying waste to that most basic idea, it's going further and insisting that even within the secret deliberations inside the White House, the president doesn't actually need evidence to order someone's death. This, of course, creates a legal justification for the administration's earlier admission to the New York Times that, quote, it in effect counts all military-age males in a strike zone as combatants. It also explains why Obama's spokesman said the president was justified in executing a 16-year-old U.S. citizen simply because the kid, quote, should have had a far more responsible father. According to the new Justice Department white paper, those killings are all now perfectly legal because supposedly the law does not require the United States to have clear evidence in order to kill anyone, much less identify them as a threat after they've been terminated. Now, in the context of the administration's other high-profile legal moves, this is a huge and frightening shift in precedent. When it comes to President Obama's campaign contributors on Wall Street, the idea of too big to jail means no amount of overwhelming evidence apparently can prompt a single white-collar prosecution, regardless of the scope of financial terrorism. By contrast, when it comes to any U.S. citizen the president unilaterally deems a terrorist, too big to curtail means that not a single shred of actual evidence is needed not just to prosecute that person, but to outright execute him. Should Congress continue to do nothing about this, say, for instance, by confirming the CIA nomination of one of the architects of too big to curtail, John Brennan, this double standard will become the assumed norm, one that will be exploited by Democratic and Republican presidents alike. As evidenced by its public statements, the Obama administration clearly knows that to be the case, and it's now doing its best to guarantee that its radical precedents are cemented for the long haul.